Well, I took old Pearl here for a spin, and she's got some problems with her speedometer. The speedometer is clear off. Now, I don't think the odometer is going to work. It hasn't changed at all, and so I think I might take it apart and see what's going on in there. But I think I could drive another 1,000,000 miles and it'll say 511588. And this speedometer is not the original. It says manufacture date was January 9th of 2001. This is 1987. So someone swapped in a different speedometer, so it's not like there's any way to tell how many miles are on this thing anyway. But of course, I would probably want an odometer. But for now, I want to get this speed set in, and I'm going to show you how to do that. I think it's going to be a pretty easy fix. The key is you got to know what speedometer you have before you start doing all these calibrations, because see on the back here, it's got all these these are called dip switches. And if you don't have it right, you're just going to look like a real dip, you know what. So let's go ahead and figure out what this is. Okay, so Peterbilt don't help you out much. It gives you some identification on there, but you can't, I mean, if you don't know your speedometers, you might not know what series you have. And so I see a lot of confusion, whether you have a 500 series. This isn't a 500 series, that's easy to see. A 700 series or a 900 series, because they kind of have the same, the dip switches on the back. If you get the wrong calibration, you're going to be thrown off completely. So you really need to figure out what kind you have. And one of the easiest ways to do it without having to spend a bunch of time is to figure out what kind of electrical hookup you have. So let's take a look. Okay, so here's a diagram of the 700 series. And you can see on the 700 series, let me hold this straight here. The battery connector's on the top, and then there's a signal ground. And then on the bottom is the 2-speed axle and the power ground. On the 900 series, it's kind of the opposite. The 2 speeds on the top, on the round one, and then on the one that's dented in, the power ground is on the other side, the signal's on the bottom, and then the battery. Okay, so here we are. Here we have the wiring harness. You can see the flat edges on some of these. That way you don't put this thing in wrong. You can only put it in one way. This top wire right here, it's going nowhere. That's my 2-speed axle. I got a ground here. Down here we could hook a multimeter up, turn the ignition on, and we'll see we got power to that. And that is going to be our battery. And then we would be able to turn the lights on, and we could check to see that this one on this side, this orange and green one, is a lamp which lights up the gauge. And then this one right here is going to be our signal wire, and then this one right here is going to be our ground signal wire. So this is going to correspond with the 900 series. So I'm assuming that this is going to be a 900 series because it is the same on the back. Turn it around here. It's going to look the same as this 900 series. You can see the 700 series looks a little bit different, but the 900 series and this one line up perfect. So we're going to go ahead and use this as a 900 series, easy peasy. Before we go and we try to check and see getting this thing calibrated and getting those dip switches all perfect, we need to make sure everything else is working first, or everything else is lined up. So I checked the battery. It's good. The battery wire's good. And then I checked the lamp. I already know the lamp worked because the light came on. And now I'm going to check to see if we have the right ohms on the signal wires. Let me show you how to do that. Okay, so now we're going to check the ohms. Make sure you have it set on the right thing. On the ohms measurement, if you don't know how to do that, you'll have to probably look up something else. Figure out how to do ohms on your multimeter, or whatever they call that bugger. I call it a multimeter. So I'm sticking one end inside the signal wire that goes to the sensor, it's the signal wire, and then the other's the ground that goes to the sensor. So I got them both plugged in, and I can really trace it back because it actually splits off into the two wires that go all the way back to the transmission where the sensor is. And I'll show you that in a second. I got them plugged in, and now I'm checking, and it says 740. And on the instructions, it says that signal needs to be between 99 and 4,000. So we're good to go on that. If that wasn't good to go, you need to start checking some other stuff. All right, we're moving right along here, ain't we? If the ohms weren't right, that means you probably have something broken somewhere. It could either be a wire that's chafed up, that's not working right, that's going all the way back to the sensor, and we're going to go look at that real quick. Or it's the sensor itself. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we need to do about the sensor before we get going. All right, you see this right here? Here's the drive shaft. The sensor's right here. It could be located somewhere else, but it's a very long sensor, and then it has a wire that comes out of it, 2 wires. If your ohms weren't right, you would unplug this and then do the ohm test right on the sensor itself. So on the connector that goes there, and then if your sensor wasn't right, then you would know it's that, and you would need to probably replace your sensor. If that is correct, you know it's got the right ohms, then you probably have a wiring issue between here and your dash. So then that would allow you to go ahead and figure out, man, I got a wire that's broken somewhere, and that's what you need to fix. The other thing you want to do is to check this, loosen this nut right here, and then you tighten this. I would take the sensor out, clean it off, make sure it's clean, and then put the sensor back in. Okay, this is if you're having speed problems. Put the sensor back in and tighten it all the way down till it's tight, and then you back it off a 1/2 to 3/4 of a turn, and then tighten that lock nut up again. And that's all there is to that, to making sure that sensor's in there right. Sometimes the sensor could be in there, it's too far off of the gear, or it's because there's a gear that it's sensing as it goes around and around and around. If it's too far away, it's not getting the right signal, or you know, it could be mashed up there and just beat to crap. And then you can see if the sensor's damaged and buy a new one. They're not very expensive, so pretty simple to do. Tighten all the way down, and then loosen it up 1/2 to 3/4 of a turn. Okay, now to calibrate the dip switch settings is where we're at now. We got to figure out what settings this needs to be on. We can't just take it off down the road and start hitting switches. You could, but there's hundreds and hundreds of ways you can do this. You're gonna be crazy doing it. So you have to do some math. Okay, there's a pretty simple equation to do this. Even if you're really terrible at math, you can do this. Believe me, this is not gonna be a problem. So what you need is you're gonna need a calculator. There's probably one on your phone. I've got one right here. The first and foremost, we have to figure out, because we have to match the speedometer to the tire size we have, and then we have to match it to the ratio that our gear's going at in our rear ends. So in my truck, I have a 358 rear end, and I have 22 1122s for my drive tires, because we have to figure out how many rotations that tire's going around every mile, and then we have to put that into the equation of what our ratio is on our rear ends. And so math equation's different for the 700 series and for the 900 series. We're going to do the equation for the 900 series. If you have a different one, you just need to look up the calibration on that and then do the math on it. So for this one, you find the diameter of your tire. Okay, now mine's about 41.3, so we find 41.3 inches is the diameter of my rear tires. They're brand new, so they're ready to go. Then we take that number, we take 20,178, and we divide it by the diameter of the tire of 41.3. Okay, so 20,178 divided by 41.3. comes to about 488. So I'm doing 488. Now we're going to take the 488, which is the revolutions that thing goes around every mile, okay? Now we take the 488 and we multiply that by our rear end ratio. So mine's a 3.58. 488 times 3.58 equals 1,747. Now that we have that number, we have to multiply it, 1,747, we need to multiply it by the number of teeth that are on the output gear, and it's usually about 16. I think is most often number I see is 16. Mine's 16. It's where the yoke goes on the transmission, and that's what the sensor is hitting at. So it's times 16, multiply times 16 equals 27,952. Finally, this is the last one you have to do. You divide that big number by 120. And that comes to 232.9. I'm just going to go with 2. You can go with 232. You can go with 233. I'm going to try 232. So then we have to go find the chart. And this is a chart. And we've got to find the dip switch settings for 232. And mine comes to right here. 232. Tells me 1, 2, 3, 5, 9, and 10. And that means these switches are going to be on. On the back of this thing, it says open, and then the other side's empty. Open means off. Closed means on. It's pretty simple. Closed is on. Open is off. Kind of hard for me to say that. So 1, 2, 3. So what you do is you just push down toward the top if it's going to be on the closed side, which is on. You press it down, okay? Then so 1 is on, 2 is on, 3 is on, it's already on, 4 is off or open, so I pushed it down. I'll make sure I'm pushing it down, okay? Then 5, 6 is not on there, so 6 is open. 7 is open, which is off. Should probably just say off. 8 is off. 9 is on. 10 is on. So we'll do that again. 1, 2, 3 is on. 4 is off, which is in the open position. 5 is on. 6 off. 7 off. 8 off. 9 is on. 10 is on. And that is all there is to it. You hook it back up and you test it. If it's a little off, you might just change around, might try a 233. Or if it's way off, then you might have the wrong freaking speedometer. So I hope that helps out. I'm gonna test drive it. I'm sure it's gonna work good and we'll be set to go. Okay, so I test drove it and everything works great. The way I test drive it is I use my phone with the GPS on it, and then I can see what speed I'm going, and then I can see what speed the speedometer is. Now I'm using my phone to record things, so I couldn't really you know, show anyone how I was doing it. Otherwise I would just be going, hey look, I'm going 15 miles an hour because I put my finger out the window. You know, that doesn't make any sense. So test drive it, use the GPS, see if you're close. Hopefully you are. I hope that helps, and if it helped out at all, please hit the like and subscribe button. I really appreciate it. Y'all take care.